from Hungary. And we will be married, and then we are going to have one boy, one girl, one boy, one girl, one boy, 5, all Americans. And the boys will be watchmakers like me. All I have to do is find quick a job.
The first thing to do is to find your place to live. Terry Finnegan's place, it's just the thing. It's clean, comfortable, and cheap. Look, you just walk down that street for 5 blocks.
Blocks? Blocks again? You cannot come with me?
No, I'm due back at headquarters. But you'll find it easy enough. Just walk 5 blocks. Straight, no turns. 5 blocks. It's the Excelsior Palace. You can't miss it.
But if I'm lost again, I come to you, Mr. O'Hara, to police headquarters, and you can find me again, huh? You're a very good friend. I will never forget.
The following is a paid advertisement. Really? A paid advertisement? Wait, the B-Movie Cast got paid? Yes, the following is a paid advertisement. This episode of the B-Movie Cast is brought to you by the estate planning services of Twyla Minear Brooks, attorney at law. Remember, when the zombie apocalypse comes, things will move pretty fast.
The body should be disposed of at once, preferably by cremation.
Well, how long after death, then, does the body become reactivated?
It's only a matter of minutes.
Minutes? Well, that doesn't give people time to make any arrangements.
Oh, you're right. It doesn't give them time to make funeral arrangements. The bodies must be carried to the street and burned. They must be burned immediately. Soak them with gasoline and burn them. The bereaved will have to forego the dubious comforts that a funeral service will give. They're just dead flesh and dangerous.
So don't leave your estate planning needs until the last minute, because you don't know when that last minute could come. Call Twyla Minear Brooks, attorney at law, at 859-351-2294. That's 859-351-2294. Remember, when you go, you don't want people saying,
"Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up."
Twyla Minear Brooks, attorney at law, is licensed for practice in the state of Kentucky. Consult your local attorney for matters outside of the state of Kentucky.
Command mark. The time will be running at X-20 seconds. Mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fire.
Spawned by the continuing decline and fall of society as we know it, and created on the second-floor spare-bedroom studio in the Piedmont of South Carolina. Podcasting on a shoestring budget and changing the world one freak at a time. It's the B-Movie Cast with your host, Vince Rotolo.
From coast to coast and worldwide via the internet, this is the B-Movie Cast, the podcast of unusual film and television.
Hi, folks, and welcome back to the B-Movie Clubhouse for episode 482 of the B-Movie Cast. Before I go any farther, I want to get our contact information out of the way. We love hearing from all of you, so we have a feedback segment devoted to your comments and suggestions, and this is how you can contact us. Option 1, pick up your phone and dial 888-936-0808. This is a toll-free number and a very easy way to leave a voice message. Option 2, you can make your own MP3 file and send it in to bmoviecast@gmail.com. Or use your smartphone voice software and record a call, then just send that in as an attachment instead. Or option 3, if you're not into talking, you can just shoot us an email to bmoviecast@gmail.com. Our website is bmoviecast.com, where you can subscribe to the podcast. It's free, and there you can join us on the Facebook B-Moviecast fan page and letterbox. Also, you can play the contest by sending in your answer by email to bmoviecast@gmail.com with contest in the subject line. And check out the links while you're there, or buy a T-shirt. I currently have smalls to 4Xs. If you want to help us financially, there's a donation box you can click on as a supporter on the Lugosi, Karloff, Agar, and the infamous Xanadu level through PayPal. Also, the easiest way to donate is to click on the Amazon bar on the right side of our homepage. This Amazon link will take you to Amazon.com to make your purchase. It doesn't cost you anything, and you can still log into your personal accounts when you get there. It's completely private, so think about us before you buy online. So now, through the miracle of modern technology and thousands of miles of wires, server farms, PCs, Macs, the Internet, and duct tape, we have our co-host from Lexington, Kentucky, author, editor, screenwriter, film producer, Nic Brown. He has a new website. It is authornicbrown.com. That's AuthorNicBrown.com. He is the author of the Werewolf for Hire book series, starting with Blood Curse. He's also selling a book in collaboration with his wife, Fiona, the B-Movie Cookbook. All of these are available on Amazon. He's produced 2 movies, Wretch and Loss Prevention. Both can be ordered on Blu-rays or DVDs through Amazon. He is also the producer of a 3rd film, the soon-to-be-released Fall of Usher. Hi, I have a few shout-outs before we tackle today's film. Number 1 is a big thanks to Bill Mize, creator of Bill Watches Movies and Bill Makes Podcasts. And congrats on the 2nd anniversary of Bill Makes Podcast show. And also congrats on your new show, Monsters by the Minute. And a million thanks for becoming a new supporter. We thank you, Bill. We really do. The second shout-out is to Brian. I want to let him know I sent his T-shirt on Saturday morning, U.S. Postal. Hopefully it'll get to you in the near future. Thank you for thinking about us in your time of apparel needs. And thirdly, I want to thank Patrick Kelly so much for sending me, Nick, and Juan a copy of the new Stephen King story, Red Screen. Yes, not only is it a great story, but it forced me to dig out my Kindle and learn things. Thank you. So, now on with the show. Today's movie is a Juan pick, The Face Behind the Mask from 1941. It's an iconic film noir based on the radio play Interim, written by Thomas Edward O'Connell. It was shot in either 12 days or 20 days, depending on who you listen to, mostly on the Columbia lot, except for the final scenes in the Yuma, Arizona desert. It stars Peter Lorre and was directed by Robert Florey, acclaimed as the best director working in major Studio B films. And I have to add here that he was born in Paris, but was heavily influenced by German expressionist cinema. I had to get that in just to bug Nick. But be warned, it's very sad. Don't get me wrong, it's an excellent film, very well paced and acted, and beautifully filmed. It's just very, very sad. One critic called it a damning indictment on the illusion of the American dream. I just know that it made me fall in love with a few characters, and then it wasn't very nice to them. And that's an understatement. And is it just me, or did you guys see a parallel in Midnight Cowboy with Joe Buck, Ratso relationship, and the Janos Dinky relationship in this movie?
I could totally see that, Mary. I'll be honest, I haven't seen Midnight Cowboy in about 20 years, so it didn't occur to me. But now that you brought it up, yeah, I could definitely see that, and I could see that maybe the film was inspired by this or influenced by it. So that's a good call.
I wonder if they did, if it was. I'll have to look
well, you know, people did watch movies back then, so it's very possible. I mean, I'm just saying, you know, sometimes filmmakers watch other films and go, hey, that's a good idea. Yeah. Especially when German expressionism is involved.
I had to, I'm sorry.
Uh-huh.
Well, I watched the Blu-ray that Juan sent. It's an excellent print. It was a 1080 presentation of the film. There's an audio commentary by film historian Alan K. Rode. There's an interview with the same guy. A year later, it's called Facemaker, Peter Lorre and the Face Behind the Mask. And there's also a Kim Newman video interview on Face Behind the Mask. And they did a really good job, and there's a lot of history in there, and I learned a lot of stuff about Peter Lorre. So I think it's on YouTube. I didn't see it on Amazon Prime streaming. So
it's available through fifthdimensionfilms.net.
Yay, Juan.
One might suggest they picked up the really nice Blu-ray from Juan.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Nick. Yeah, I mean, the Blu-ray is fabulous. I tell you. I mean, I have to say one thing. I am really glad that they put this out on Blu-ray and not direct to DVD, because for many, many years this has never been available in any format, except the gray market area, where there was a lot of washed out 16 millimeter prints of the film in the gray market area, and it's never been available commercially or factory. And I guess the fans really wanted this film to come out, and it did its justice. It was released on Blu-ray, so yeah, absolutely a gorgeous, gorgeous print of the film. Mind you, now this movie it is stated and it's slated as a horror film, but it's not really a so-called horror film. You might say, Mary mentioned the noir effect of it. It is kind of like a noir. It's a thriller. I would classify it more like a noir thriller or noir mystery than horror. Because of the fact that the only thing that blends the horror into there is basically the effects of him wearing a mask and having a hideous face.
Yes.
But other than that, I mean, the film. I really liked this film, and I thought it was one of Peter Lorre's early films, back in the 40s, in the early 40s, right after doing, the stuff that he did. Keep in mind that he also was involved a lot with German Expressionism. I mean, he did M, the movie M, back in the 30s, and that wasn't really,
One? Have you seen it?
Yes, I have.
Have you seen it, Nick?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay.
But
you gotta
I'm sorry.
see it.
I'm busy groaning because German Expressionism was mentioned yet again, and my allergy to German Expressionism is kicking in. Okay, I'm okay now.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, I tell you, I mean, it's incredible because this film, again, I mean, by having Robert Florey being, they're classifying as a film noir crime film with a little horror twist in there.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's more like, Mary saying it's a sad film, but it is basically what it is. A movie that has an intriguing storyline to it, and it's like a lot of movies about back in the day when, immigrants were coming to this country and they wanted to get their America the Great, the start, and they wanted to get out there and get work and get, become citizens and everything else. And then, it just sometimes doesn't turn out the way it's supposed to be. But it is a very good film. I mean, and kudos to Florey for directing this film. Florey is no stranger to horror, I got to tell you. I mean, Florey was around, back when the big guys from, Universal and MGM in the early 20s during the silent era. I'm talking about James Whale, and I'm talking about all these great directors, Todd Browning, and all these other guys. He was around, and he even he did a lot of work with these producers and writers from back in the early 20s during the silent era in Hollywood, because that's when he came to Hollywood.
Can I jump in here and do the contest before we get into the movie any further?
No, yeah, absolutely, no.
Okay.
I just wanted to add a little tidbit on Florey. That was it. But I mean, because you mentioned him and stuff like that. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Well, the answer to the contest was Gymkata, 1984-85.
Oh,
Gymkata.
Good movie.
Yep.
It is?
Okay.
I like it. I'm going to say I enjoy the hell out of Gymkata, but saying Gymkata is a good movie is like saying that the egg salad sandwich you got at the vending machine in the bathroom at the gas station was a good sandwich. If you're hungry, it tastes okay, but ultimately it's just not good or good for you. But, Gymkata, though, I really enjoy. So, yeah, enjoy some Gymkata action. And, by the way, for those who have not seen Gymkata, yes, please.
Okay.
That's all I got to say. Yes, please.
I'm going to have to see it now.
Oh, yes, you are, Mary.
Well, our first movie today was donated by Patrick Kelly. Again, thank you, Patrick, so much.
Hey, thanks, Patrick.
It's a DVD of the 1973 film called The Clones. It's, according to Patrick, this 1973 film revolves around a goofball scheme to clone the world's top scientists in order to control the weather. I think they're doing that now.
Wait, cloning scientists to control the weather or being goofballs?
Both.
Okay, just checking. And by the way,
What?
If you can figure out how to clone people, why are you? Just figure out the weather.
Yeah, why would you?
I mean, what the hell convoluted Rube Goldberg looking contraption plan is that? Oh my God. Anyway, sorry.
Okay. Well,
anyway, it sounds like a fun movie though. So hey, I'll check it out.
It stars Gregory Sierra, who played Chano on TV's Barney Miller, Otis Young, who starred with Jack Nicholson in Last Detail, and John Drew Barrymore, the son of John Barrymore and the father of Drew Barrymore. So the winner of the movie is...
If you can call them a winner.
Brenda. Sorry.
Oh, and Brenda. Hey, Brenda got it, and my apologies to Brenda, but I do want to thank Brenda. No, seriously, she sent me a card just to say hi, but also in the card, she apparently bought a button maker. And she made me a button that is my web address and it says right there, no K, Nick, no K, Brown, author Nick, no K, Brown, at, .com. And I appreciate that because, again, people always want to put the K in. So thank you, Brenda. And I like the button, by the way, and I like the background on the button, which was part of the cover art from one of my books.
Cool.
So much appreciated, and this is a good shout-out for her. Thank you.
I got to add on to that real quick, Nick, to what you just said about Brenda with the buttons, because she did the same for me. She sent me an array of buttons, small size and medium-sized buttons with my Mexican monsters on it. So she put Santo, and she had Blue Demon, and she had some other of the luchadors. And very, very nice. What she did is she superimposed the posters, the Santo posters, and she did some of the other. She had a Blue Demon one that she did for me with a little bubble words. Juan's best movies are at fifthdimensionfilms.net. It's really nice, and she did good work. It's different sizes. She had like medium size and big oversized buttons and stuff like that. So yeah, thank you so much, Brenda. You'll be getting my order soon for the buttons for next year's Monster Bash.
Woot! Great. Thank you, Brenda. That was great. Wow.
Did Brenda send you anything, Mary?
No. Ha ha! Oh, I'm going to cry. Well, she did offer to sit at the table at the Monster Bash for me, so.
Well, see, that's okay. That in and of itself is
it's wonderful. Yes. Well, okay. Our second DVD prize has been donated by Daryl Majewski, creator and editor of Scream Magazine. That's CREEM. And it is the complete third season of Haven. This one ran in the fall of 2012. It premiered July 9th, 2010 on Sci-Fi and ran for 5 seasons. So this is the third season. Haven is an American-Canadian supernatural drama television series loosely based on the Stephen King novel The Colorado Kid from 2005. Stars Emily Rose, Lucas Bryant, Nicholas Campbell, and Eric Balfour, whose characters struggle to help townspeople with supernatural afflictions and to protect the town from the effects of those afflictions. So, the winner of that one is Sean Stiff from Canada. So
congratulations.
Somebody's getting some Canadian postage going. Oh, yeah.
I love you too, Nick.
Oh, yeah. No discount for Mary.
Okay.
That'll be your entire month's pay.
Yes. Okay. Our third prize is, again, the mystery gift from Kenny B. Santito. Guaranteed to be worth more than 2 minutes it took you to enter the contest. Guaranteed to be a DVD or Blu-ray, book and or magazine, and some knick-knack, and something from south of the border, perfectly legal something. And again...
But once again, disappointed.
I want to know what it is, so you have to, post a picture or send it to me. Because Christopher Page did, and that was a really nice bundle of gifts he got. I was jealous. I wanted it. Anyway, the winner of this prize is Marlo Brown. So congratulations, Marlo.
Congratulations to Marlo.
We will be in touch with Santito and let him know. So thank you. Thank you,
and
Santito.
Mary,
yes?
I think you have forgotten one more prize.
What did I forget?
The mystery gift, the mystery movie that I'm going to send out from my collection.
Oh, cool.
So let's have another winner, and I will send them a DVD or Blu-ray of my choice from a pile that I have that I'm getting rid of. So, yeah, and by getting rid of them, I mean I'm sending them to people. And be nice, because I've got a bunch of VHS tapes I could start shipping out. But
oh, wow.
Yeah,
I know, right?
Yeah, how many people still have VHS machines?
Actually, they've gone through quite a renaissance lately.
Oh, okay.
There's something about that needs to adjust tracking look of video that people just really seem to go for.
Okay.
But who's going to win this mystery movie?
Winner is Scott Wirtz. Congratulations, Scott.
All right. Well, send me Scott's address, and I will get a mystery movie out to Mr. Scott as soon as possible.
Cool.
All right.
And you lucked out because that's California.
Well, yes.
Okay.
And then, by the way, if it had been Canada, I would have just mailed the disc by itself without the box. So, here you go. Just put it in an envelope and mail it. There you go. It's a Christmas card.
I did learn to send things media mail.
Oh, you haven't been sending things media mail, Mary?
No, I learned early on to send
Oh,
things
my God.
media mail. Yes.
So how many mortgages did Jeff take out on the house to pay for all the postage?
That's why I keep begging for money from all the listeners.
Man.
Yes. Okay. On with the movie. The Face Behind the Mask.
Well,
that seemed to kill the conversation.
Oh boy. Okay, so basically, Nick, you have any intro comments on the film?
Well, I mean, other than the fact that I was shocked by the presence of German expressionism in it. And by the way, for the record, I didn't see any German expressionism in it, other than the fact that it was a film noir, which means it's got a lot of shadows.
Yeah. Well, that's it.
Yeah, so I'm calling it. That's, film noir, a.k.a. they couldn't afford lighting.
Yeah, that's about the right mark there, I mean, but the
cinematographer was Franz Planer, and he worked.
So he was the guy that couldn't afford lighting? Yeah,
well, he worked in the 20s and 30s with F.W. Murnau and William Thiel and all those guys.
Okay.
So that's where he got the whole German expressionism part.
Well, okay. Mary, just for the record, by the way, I'm just picking on it. I'm not... This is called humor.
I know.
And when I have to say that it's humor, everyone knows it's not. So at this point, I just sound sort of dorky. So I'm going to go back to Juan's original question of, did I have any comments about the film? I thought it was extremely good, despite the presence of quasi-German expressionism.
It was a really good movie. That surprised me.
Yeah.
Well, we could add on to that for the reason being, because of the fact that Laurie was involved doing these type of films. Keep in mind that, Laurie, being Hungarian-born or, Hungarian-American actor, he came. He was in Germany, okay, and he was back in the 20s in Germany, in Berlin, and one of the great directors of the time, Fritz Lang, chose Laurie to be his star pupil in the movie M. Again, the movie M, it was one of the biggest box office sensations in the Weimar Republic. But the fact was that the film the critics didn't really like the fact that him portraying him as a serial killer in the movie. If you've never seen the movie, you really got to see it at least once. Mary,
he was a serial killer of children.
Well, I mean, but it worked for him, and it got him his start. Where from then on, Hitchcock got a hold of him and liked what he did, and then he put him in movies, and then from there on. MGM got a hold of him, in Hollywood, and he started many. His thing about being in horror films came really at the rise of Hollywood doing these mystery films in the early 30s, like Mad Love, Crime and Punishment, and all these movies. Then he went on to do other things, but because of the way he looked and the persona that he gave, the directors thought of him being an excellent B-movie player in a lot of films.
Wasn't Mad Love a remake of Hands of Orlok? Kind of. I thought it was. The 1920...
I want to say that it is, Mary.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, we did both of those films on the cast, and it came up.
Yeah.
So... Yeah, but it's been, again, that was back in our pre-episode 100 days, so
true.
It might as well been, I mean, it was practically last century.
Very true, very true. And one of the main reasons Peter Lorre left Europe was because of the war. Being a Hungarian Jew, he decided to get out of the country. And that's when he went to Paris, and then he went to the UK and met Hitchcock and did The Man Who Knew Too Much. And he didn't speak English then.
Well, he did a good job.
He did that entire movie phonetically. Because he spoke Hungarian, German, and French by that time, but he didn't speak English. Which is amazing to me that anybody could speak that many languages.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you another film that you might want to check out of his. Now that we're talking on Peter Lorre, the main character actor in the film, is the 1935 film Crime and Punishment. You want to see that film with him in it because besides being directed by Joseph von Sternberg, who was one of the great directors of the silent cinema back in the 20s and through the 30s. Until he got finally canned. MGM canned him. First he was, with Universal, he went to MGM, and then he went to Columbia. But von Sternberg did Crime and Punishment and casted Peter Lorre in it. I guess, in this movie, Laurie plays a Russian character, a lead role. He's a Russian in here,
Okay.
And so they wanted to try him doing different roles, being a Russian character, being a German character, being, any character besides being an American character because of his language and he had that accent when he spoke, if you know what I mean.
Then he went on to do the Mr. Moto movies. He did.
Those were some of his best movies. I kind of enjoyed those a lot.
I do too.
I really did.
Well, he was in Casablanca, so that's all I got to say.
That was later.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Actually, that's probably my favorite of his roles, but my other favorite is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Oh, really?
Yes. What?
You didn't like him in The Maltese Falcon?
I didn't say I didn't like him in The Maltese Falcon, Mary. You were, good Lord, you were misinformation personified. I'm serious here. I never said I didn't like him in The Maltese Falcon. Okay. I said one of my other favorite movies he's in is 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Mary then paints Nick to be a communist who doesn't like The Maltese Falcon.
How about Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea?
He was in Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, wasn't he?
He was in that, yes.
Oh, my God, that dude just can't get away from the bottom of the sea.
No, he can't. And then Corman.
I mean, what the hell, Peter Lorre?
Really?
No, I tell you, it's amazing. I mean, he became well known. He became actually because of the films that he did and the personification that he created as being everybody looked at him as like a mean character, a bad guy, a criminal, even like a horror, casted as a horror star later on in the 50s and then into the 60s. You know that he became Roger Corman put him in all of his movies with that he did with Vincent Price and Boris Karloff. Peter Lorre was in all of the Poe movies that he did in the early 60s. So, I mean, that's where he got his horror personification added on to that. But, did you know that he was also a James Bond villain?
Yeah.
He was a James Bond villain on the TV version of the James Bond
Casino Royale.
Yeah.
Yeah, so technically he was probably the first
Bond villain
on screen.
He was.
So there you go, because he played Le Chiffre or Le Chiffre or whatever the dude's name was.
Yeah,
He played the chef.
Yeah.
Nick Brown continues to massacre the French language relentlessly.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
One of my favorites of his as a film noir, because he was in many, many noirs, throughout the 1940s and in the 50s. But one of my favorites was Stranger on the Third Floor. That's one of my all-time favorites of his American noir, film noir movie that he did.
Isn't that considered like one of the first film noir ever?
Yeah, it was considered the first true
film
like
noir.
The actual true noir film, based on a true incident or a true story.
Yeah.
He was really really good in that one. I mean, really very, very good. And the other cast that was in that film were really excellent along with him in the film. So yeah, he casted very well, Mary, and a lot of the noir films throughout the 40s and the 50s. But he also got the opportunity. He could have been casted. Universal was eyeballing him to try to cast him in The Son of Frankenstein. But I guess he turned it down. He declined it.
Yeah.
The Son of Frankenstein with Basil Rathbone in 1939. He didn't want to do that role. I mean, and then he went on to do. He also was casted for. He screen test for Hunchback of Notre Dame, but then again, it didn't get the part. Landed up going to Charles Lawton, but he was just really, really good. He casted with Boris Karloff good. He casted with Bela Lugosi good. It was like the perfect trio.
Yeah.
Like they said in the Roger Corman film, The Comedy of Terrors, the perfect trio of terror, that was Peter Lorre, along with Karloff and Vincent Price,
Yeah. Well, he did a lot of stuff like with that crew, the Casablanca crew.
Yes,
Bogart
he did.
And those guys. He was really good friends with them in real life.
I have some lobby cards, almost a complete set of the lobby cards from the Beast with Five Fingers. I don't know if you know that film.
I want to see that one.
Oh, it's really good. It's a really good one, The Beast with Five Fingers.
Yeah.
So I mean, and I have a whole set of the lobby cards. He was in that. So basically, that was a really good film of him. And another, again, taking on the story of the Hands of Warlock story, which would carry it on through with Mad Love, and then it went to The Beast with Five Fingers, also too on the same storyline as the Hands of Warlock, continuing that storyline.
Yeah. And then later on, he worked with Corman a couple times.
Yes, he did. He worked pretty much in all the Corman movies throughout the early 60s, along with Karloff, Vincent Price.
Yeah. He did the Poe films, yeah.
Yeah, it was them three that really, and they were great films. I think those are the Corman. To me, those were the better or the best Corman movies that he ever did. Because Corman was known as king of the, doing a lot of B movies, but those movies were really excellent, and he casted other great stars. Nicholson was in. It was in one, and then you had other stars. You had Joey Brown, even the comedian Joey Brown was is in one of the Poe movies that Corman did with them. You know, I think it was either the Comedy of Terrors or one of the other ones. You know.
I read that. Well, this is according to Vincent Price because he and Laurie got to be good friends making those movies. That he and Peter Lorre went to view Bela Lugosi's body during Bela's funeral, and Laurie, upon seeing Lugosi dressed in his famous Dracula cape, quipped, "Do you think we should drive a stake through his heart, just in case?"
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I can't imagine being such good friends with those people. That's great.
It's amazing. He had an incredible career. He had so many films. Yeah. I mean, he really, in this movie, we're going to find out he's coming here to try to make a life, but he really did in reality. This could be like a true life film for him, coming here and becoming very successful in Hollywood and making movies, and he casted in so many movies.
Yeah.
I mean, he must have over 150, if not 200 films under his credit, you know?
That's true.
And he did everything. You know, he even did comedy, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah.
He was with Abbott and Costello. He was with Jerry Lewis. He was in the Beach Party movies. He was all over the place.
Well, and the thing about Peter Lorre is he had such a distinctive look.
Exactly.
That, he could play, and I think it was very easy for Hollywood to cast him in kind of the heavier roles, like as the heavy in films, because he looked different, and the way he looked wasn't like a typical leading man heroic character, and so I think they often used that to catapult him into some of the darker roles, but it also lent itself to some of the comedic castings too.
Right, exactly. And this is what he was really good because he, the face alone, he didn't have to say much. His expression on the face when he looked at you with those beady eyes, you know what I mean? Indeed, it's like you would laugh just in the films, like for example the Abbott and Costello film. I think it was the Meets the Mummy, and also with My Favorite Brunette with Bob Hope. He was in that. And Chaney, too, was in that film, Lon Chaney. So basically doing comedy-type parody and noir, and, parody and things like that, made him an all-around actor that he can act and do horror and everything else. I didn't think he was really involved in doing hardcore horror, if you know what I mean. Yeah. But, The Beast with Five Fingers is considered a horror film, but it's not really. It's something where he's like an evil guy in the film and stuff like that. But if you look at him, compare that, and then watch him in My Favorite Brunette, or you watch him in some of the other comedies that he did with the comedians, and man, it's incredible,
Yeah. I read somewhere where one of his wives, he's a crazy guy in real life. He was making like $70,000 a year back in the 50s, 40s, and he'd blow it all. He was just crazy.
Well,
what are you saying?
He liked to party.
Laurie was crazy?
He liked to party.
Well, that's good. And you know what? I would party the hell out of a party with Peter Lorre.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. Send me to Vegas with Peter Lorre. That's a weekend.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Me and Peter Lorre on the Strip.
Well, he did have morphine addiction. He kicked it quite a few times.
Like I said, me and Peter Lorre doing morphine on the Strip. I don't remember it, but, I'm sure it happened. Even though he died before I was born. That's beside the point.
Yeah, I can't believe he was so young. He died from a stroke.
Mm-hmm.
Well, gee, could it be because he spent all his time partying and doing morphine?
He did have a lot of physical problems. He really did. I think he started morphine because he had either appendicitis or what was it?
He probably had something because they just stick you on morphine because that was, hey, here's good painkiller morphine. Yeah. By the way, you'll be wanting some more of that later. See me after class. Yeah,
he just had a lot of physical problems on top of everything else. So.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, he made it all the way up into He made it through the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and then the 60s. And then, you know, his final film, I'll tell you, to me, he went out with a bang doing a comedy film because his final film role was a comedy with Jerry Lewis. He really liked doing movies with Jerry Lewis. For some reason, I mean, Jerry Lewis liked him and they got along together. So the last movie that he did was the movie with Jerry Lewis called The Patsy. And, this is a movie that Jerry Lewis would direct it, and he personally wanted to have Peter Lorre in this film. So he did. He got him.
Did they have enough film in the can of him before he died for them to... was he in the movie a lot?
Oh, yeah. He was one of the characters throughout the movie in The Patsy.
Okay.
So, I mean, John Carradine was in it, too. But, I mean, he was... he was, again, doing comedy and everything, and the way the beady eye look and everything, and then not saying much of anything, but just some of the things. I mean, it's really nice to see him doing these films, and I guess this being the last film that he did because he passed away that same year in 1964.
Yeah.
I guess he was going to be in another Jerry Lewis movie. If he wouldn't have died, he would have been in another Jerry Lewis movie in '64. You know. So, but Peter Lorre, kudos to him. He was a great American-Hungarian actor that did so much throughout his entire life, and a great filmography. And this movie says it all. It's a must-have. It's a movie that I definitely cherished, and I wanted to have in my collection, and now I have it. So, I mean, for a lot of people, that I'm going to recommend this to the B Movie Cast listeners, if they have never seen this one, to go out and get it and watch it.
Only be in a good frame of mind before you watch it, because it's a downer.
Okay, by the way, Mary, spoiler alert. Could you drop a couple of more? This movie's so sad. Granted, it is a film noir, so you don't exactly expect it to be a bright and sunny, cheerful flick.
But all the major... Okay, spoiler alert
Whoa.
Don't spoil it, guys.
Don't spoil it.
No. I'm calling timeout right now.
Okay.
Timeout. Everybody in this podcast, just stop what you're doing. This is going to be a rarity. I'm saying no spoilers.
Okay, cool.
If you spoil this movie, I will cut it out of the podcast. So says the man who edits the podcast. And that actually means I'll have to listen to the thing while I'm editing it.
That would be fun.
Rather than just slapping it together.
I might have to spoil it a couple times just to make you go through and edit it all out.
If you do that, Mary, then I will play all of your dialogue with dogs barking.
No.
So,
okay. So, do you guys remember Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck?
No, I have no idea who those are, Mary.
Do you remember him in Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck?
What, Peter Lorre would always pop up in those old cartoons, yeah.
I loved that. I remember that as a kid. Him popping up.
Now that was usually in the 40s, I think, wasn't it? In those editions of the cartoons.
He was in quite a few of the Looney Tune cartoons with Bugs and stuff like that, doing parodies.
Yeah,
I think he did the parody on the Casablanca, not the Maltese Falcon. He did a few parodies in cartoon form.
Yeah.
And he looked just like him.
I know.
With the beady eyes and everything, and the way he talks, and he's got low voice.
Yeah.
So he even got to be a cartoon. That's amazing.
I know. He's great. I did read too where there's just that really quick scene where he sees his face in the mirror. That when it's all messed up.
Yeah.
But they only did a very, very small segment of that. Like you can barely see. You almost have to stop the film to see it. How bad his face was. And I thought it was because they were being cheap, and they just didn't want to have to keep putting that, face on him. But then I read that during that time, the censors were the problem. They're the ones that stopped it.
Well, and I could see that, and let me throw something else out there, because I had this discussion with Fiona last night. And, the Hays Code was rolling around.
Yep.
And this was the height of the Hays Code. I mean, they came in, guns blazing and just, really took a lot of the meat out of cinema during this period. Now, that's not to say that they didn't make a lot of good movies, but you had certain thematic elements that the Hays Code demanded. It said right there in the code that you will, criminals will face justice. And, nobody gets away with it and things like that. And they also, so I could totally see, number one, them really digging in on the horror aspect of it.
Yeah, they had to minimize obsessive gruesomeness.
Yeah, which part of me thinks that makes sense, but part of me is still kind of like, well, they let you do Frankenstein and stuff like that, but at the same time, while Frankenstein was horrific, it wasn't that ghastly, I guess.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's no spoiler to say that his face is disfigured horribly in this. And one other thing Fiona and I both agreed on, the nurses in that hospital need to be fired.
True.
Okay? Because what the hell kind of bedside manner is it to see this guy and go, ah! I mean, yes, it's great for the film, but if that happened in real life, I don't care how burned up my face was, I'd be smacking that nurse.
Yeah. But I do like the effect with the mask that he had. Yeah. That was really great.
That was a good effect. And, it was creepy, and it just added this weird, creepy element to every scene that he was in with that.
Yeah, because he was so expressive at the beginning of the movie. Like his face, he was just happy and talking and fun. And then once that happened and they put that mask on him, it's like he was creepier. I don't know. It was like, I think it was creepier to have that mask on than it would be to see his face all torn up.
Yeah, I would agree, but at the same time, German expressionism.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I don't know why I just said that, but that's beside the point.
Oh, but it was dead white makeup, and he used 2 strips of adhesive tape to mobilize the sides of his face. That's all that was. And it was such a great effect.
It worked very effectively.
Yeah. It was great. I loved it. Anyway. Anything else about Peter Lorre?
I think we covered him pretty much so. I'd like to talk a little bit about the female lead in the film, we made. Because, she was really, I tell you, she was amazing. And that's Evelyn Keys.
Yeah, she was. I think it was one of the best parts she'd ever done.
I think so, too. Evelyn Keys is no stranger to film, and she's been around for quite some time, and she's done quite a few films and stuff like that, but she got casted in this film. But Keys is no unknown. She's been around in Hollywood and everything, and I think she was one of the discoveries of, believe it or not, Cecil B. DeMille back when she was young, 17, 18 years old. But the big film that she got her instant stardom was being Scarlett O'Hara's sister in Gone with the Wind. Have you ever seen her in that role?
I don't remember her in it.
Yeah,
but it's been years since I've seen Gone with the Wind.
Vivian. She was the sister. She was Scarlett O'Hara in Scarlett's sister in Gone with the Wind, and she really looked very, very, very gorgeous, very attractive, and very appealing.
Yeah.
And I think she signed right after that. The studios right away looked at her and they said, well, you know what? She was doing a lot of B movies, and they wanted to do some more A pictures. And of course, Gone with the Wind was an A picture all the way. And after she did that, she became very Universal wanted to sign her on, and Columbia signed her up for a contract, and she was with Columbia for quite a few years, and did a lot of films with Columbia Pictures. one of my favorites that she really did, that I really like of hers, was, and she was with Marilyn Monroe too, believe it or not, in the 7-Year Itch. But I like her a lot in the movie that she did, and this was a movie she did later on. It was a noir film that she did, and this was back in 1950. It's called The Killer That Stalked New York. I love that film that she was in because she was like the main lead on carrying. This is like a noir virus film where it was a smallpox epidemic that broke out in New York, and she was a carrier through these diamond smugglers, and she got contracted. She had smallpox, and she was spreading it around the city, and they were trying to contain it. And it was based on a real story. But Evelyn Keys, she was amazing in the role in The Killer That Stalked New York. So if you have not seen that one, I recommend definitely a good Evelyn Key film would be that one. The other one is The Jolson Story. The Jolson Story for me, I mean, I like my musicals, but, this is a biographical film about Al Jolson and stuff like that. And she was really great portraying Al Jolson's wife in the film. Really, really good. You can see the talent coming out of Evelyn Keys, in this film, in the Jolson Story. So I mean, and again, she went on to do many. She done some musicals, but she went all the way up into the late into the 80s doing stuff. Yeah. Now, mind you, she did stuff for TV too. The last film that she did, believe it or not, guys, Nick, she did a horror film, Return to Salem's Lot.
I'm so sorry to hear she was in Return to Salem's Lot.
Yeah. Don't you remember? She was Mrs. Axel in
Okay,
Salem's Lot.
I'm going to pause you on Don't You Remember from Return to Salem's Lot. Okay, I love Salem's Lot, the TV miniseries from the 70s. Mm-hmm. Return to Salem's Lot is, at best, 3-day-old milk left out in the sun.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is me saying that.
Wow.
Okay, this is the guy that, goes, hey, let's watch a good movie like Hudson Hawk. So if I'm saying Return to Salem's Lot's not good, just, it's a good movie if you're drinking, I guess. But anyway, I am so sorry that her career took such a turn. that her last film was.
You don't have to feel sorry for her. She was married. Her second marriage was to Charles. What is it, Vidor?
Mm-hmm. King Vidor's brother.
Yeah, he directed 3 of her pictures. Then she divorced him, married John Huston, and then she divorced him.
Great director, John Huston. Yeah.
Yeah, and then she divorced him and got married to Artie Shaw, the band leader.
Mm-hmm.
And she was worth a fortune. She didn't have.
Oh yeah, I'm telling you, she was involved with musicals. She was doing a lot of musical type films. With Here Comes Mr. Jordan. Doing the Jolson Story, which was a musical type biographical film. She did the 7-Year Itch with Marilyn Monroe. You know what I'm saying? And The Mating of Millie, and some of these other musical big band movies. And I guess being married to the band leader himself, Artie Shaw, is no difference in saying, well, let's introduce her to all these movies and get her into to see if she can do good in musicals, and she did, to some extent. But I mean, I think that she really got very related with a lot of the producers in Hollywood through, the husband Artie Shaw and her husband prior to that, being married to Charles Vidor and somebody. And Houston was the one that really paved the way for her to meet with other big producers, like Michael Todd, and she met great actors, Glenn Ford. She was a big socialite, and she really was around. She really was around. Her career in Columbia turned out to be a huge success. So my kudos goes out to Evelyn Keys, and she portrayed a good role in this film.
She did.
She was great in this.
I think she she either went to a blind place or she took lessons on how to be blind. And she did
Okay,
it
wait.
well.
You just said took lessons on how to be blind and went to a blind place. Both of those sound so weird to me, the way you said that. Okay, I just want to say it's like, well, I had piano lessons and those didn't stick. So then I tried lessons in being blind.
But it worked. She was really good at it.
Well, she did a very good job at it. I will agree with you on that. But oh man, she went to the blind place.
It was like schools for blind people to teach them how to get along in the world and function.
Yeah,
I don't know what those are called.
They're not for people to go learn to be blind.
Oh, no. Okay, I get it now.
That's how I was taking it. I was like, man, Mary's got some weird scholastic plans. Maybe later I'll learn how to, walk with a limp. I don't know. It's acting, Mary. It's acting.
Yeah. Oh, there were two things I want to say about Laurie that I forgot. Two little tidbits. Number one, he was the inspiration for the ghost mascot on General Mills' cereal Boo Berry.
Okay.
That upsets me to no end. Carry on.
And the other thing was he had one daughter, and her name was Catherine, Laurie, and in 1977, his daughter was almost abducted in L.A. by the serial killers known as the Hillside Stranglers.
Mm-hmm.
She was stopped by Kenneth Bianchi and Angelo Buono, who were impersonating policemen. But then they realized she was Laurie's daughter, and they let her go because the actor was so famous for playing serial killers in Fritz Lang's M.
Wow.
Wow, indeed.
Yeah. They were afraid of her father, Peter Lorre.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And she didn't even know that they were the killers until after they were arrested.
That's weird.
Actually, yeah. She was almost abducted by them. And they backed off because of Peter Lorre being so scary.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay, let's get on with the next one. I just had to add those two because I thought they were fascinating.
No, that was a good add-on. I mean, I didn't know that about the Hillside Strangler with him, and stuff like that. And his daughter. Mm-hmm. So basically, the only other character that I would, because they got a pretty big cast in this film, but a lot of these other guys, people in the film, are not really well-known characters per se. But I do want to talk about one more. If you want to add any of the other cast of the characters in the film, you can, Mary or Nic. Mm-hmm. But I want to talk just a little tidbit about Cy Schindel. Okay, he was Benson. I don't know if you remember. He played the character Benson.
He was one of the gang members.
Yeah, one of
the Right, he was the gang member. And you look at Cy Schindel, and he looks like he's like one of the heavy thug, heavy made. He looked like a real thuggy guy, the one that we want to. A gangster and that kind of stuff. But believe it or not, Cy Schindel was a well-known actor. He was, every time you seen him, you saw, oh, there's Cy. But he appeared with the Stooges. Yeah. He did about 40 of the Three Stooges shorts throughout the Columbia's early years in between with the 1940s, the 1935, 1945. And he was in a lot of the Three Stooges short. And he played that he was mostly a heavy, playing the heavy in the movies and, doing the comedy routines and getting knocked around and, and he would be chasing the Stooges around and stuff. But he had his dialogue was really, really tough in the Stooge shorts. You could tell he was a thug. So they impersonated him throughout all the shorts you see him. Well, there's Cy, playing that heavy role, the thug role, and the bad guy role, and, the real tough guy role with the Stooges. And they landed up kicking his butt all the time because every time he bullied the Stooges, they would all do these little things to make him fall down or fall into the thing of cement, or it was always funny tidbits with the Stooges and Cy. Yeah. So that's the wanted to mention that about Cy Schindel. Well, and here he is in this movie.
He started out as a professional boxer.
Yes, he did.
He was an actor.
Mm-hmm.
And something I read about him that, again, I don't know if this is true or not, but the L.A. police at that time suspected him, I guess this is before he was an actor, suspected him of working for the notorious L.A. gangster Mickey Cohen as a debt collector for Cohen's loan sharking and gambling operations.
Wow.
So he has the perfect face for that. I mean, he really looks like
he
that.
he had that thug face all the time. You know, he had that really mood, that little gangster, you know, that really mean-looking, gangster-looking thug, you know, beat-em-up tough guy face, you know?
The other guy, John Tyrell, that played one of the other thugs, he was in, like, 29 of the Three Stooges movies.
He was around. He was in a lot of the Stooges movies too.
Yeah, he was just
I mean,
these
guys are not. I don't know. I mean, Cy has a big film credit under his. You know, he was in a lot of serials.
Yeah,
he was in quite a few of the serials throughout the 1940s and the 50s, and he was even in some horror films. You know, he was in Monster of the Girl. He was with Boris Karloff in The Devil's Command. And he loved doing serials.
Yeah.
So you see him in all these serials. You know, the Spy Smasher, the Dick Tracy serial. He was in all these serials that came out, the Iron Claw, the Spider, all these serials throughout the 1940s and 50s. Cy was in those.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite of his is the Mysterious Dr. Satan from 1940. Mm-hmm. He was in that. So because of the way he looked and that persona that he fit it right in for the serials. Right after he did all the Stooges shorts and he did this movie, he went right on to do a lot of serials.
Yeah.
Every year, I think he must have done about maybe 40 or 50 serials, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Well, there's another actor, John Bedeau, the guy that played Lieutenant Jim O'Hara. He had like 300 credits to his name. I mean, when you see him, you recognize him. He's that.
Oh no, yeah, he was in everything.
Yeah.
That was another guy that was involved. He was also in serials too, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I mean, he did a lot of dramas and he did a lot of crime and he did a lot of noir. So yeah, he was around. Yeah. These guys are not strangers, man. When they got that many films, you know, under their belts, you know, 200 to 300 or more movies under their belts, you know that they're. I like him in the movie Gun Crazy, 1950. You know, he was in that. I liked him in that. But I mean, you know, you see him in a lot of. You know, he's there. These guys are like the early 1940s and the 50s, like the Whit Bissell of the 1930s and 40s. The Whit Bissell was the character that you see him in all these movies, the horror films. But then, you know, you see Don Bedeau and you see all these guys that they're recognizable faces whenever you see all these movies. You know, you say, oh, there's Don again. You know, he's in this movie, he's in that movie. But I got to hand it to them. These guys really know how to, you know, they had a good career and a good life.
Yeah.
This man here, you know, they have over 300 films under his belt, along with Cy and the rest of these guys. And of course, Peter Lorre, you know, I got to tell you, Robert Florey picked a good cast for this film. That's all I got to say.
Yeah. And actually, one of my favorites is Georgie Stone, that played Dinky.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I loved him. He was just so good in this. I don't know.
Georgie Stone was in a little pre-code movie that he did that I really enjoyed in 1933 called The Big Brain. I mean, he did a lot of pre-code films.
Yeah, he did.
Stone was he was a lot. I mean, on a lot of pre-codes in the early 30s.
Yeah,
he was actually a character actor that was. I gotta hand it to you. He was supposed to be with the Chester Morris in the first series of the Boston Blackie films that Chester Morris did back in the. He was Runt, the sidekick to Boston Blackie.
Yeah. Well, he did end up doing them, and yet the series lasted 8 years, and he was.
He did 15 films with Chester Morris playing the role of Runt, who was the sidekick of Boston Blackie, the criminal, you know, the detective that's going around. So I mean, you know, like I said, to be in all these movies. He was even in Superman, believe it or not, The Adventures of Superman.
Wow.
He was in Miracle on 34th Street, and quite a few things. So I mean, too bad they had to see him die. He passed away in 36, really early on in the years.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, he was going blind at the end. In the 1960s, and he thought he wouldn't be able to act again. But he was real good friends with Raymond Burr, and he gave him a job on Perry Mason series as the court reporter.
Oh,
so
wow.
He was in
How
like
cool
44
is that?
episodes of Perry Mason as the court reporter. But his eyesight was so bad, they actually had to, help him into position and walk him off the set and stuff. That's how bad his eyesight was at that point.
Oh, wow.
But that was really nice that happened, though, that Perry Mason did that. Raymond Burr.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I really liked him. And again...
So we pretty much covered the entire cast, except for, the exception of one or two. But I think we covered pretty much the main people in the film. And again, we covered, Laurie, the director. I thought that he casted a good cast, having Peter Lorre and all these other guys in this film.
Yeah.
And again, it to me, I consider it an American crime noir film with a little twist of horror. The horror part being the hideous face that he had. Nothing really horrendous about that. I mean, because he covered it up. But I mean, in the end, it was a fantastic film, and it's a must-have for the collection, and I have it in my collection.
Yeah.
And, I'm going to say it really was a great example of film noir, I think. And, categorizing this as a horror film is a mistake.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, there was a lot of horrific things that happened in the film, but it was not a horror film.
Yeah.
It was a crime drama. It was a drama. It was not what I would classify as a horror movie.
Yeah.
And the difference there is subtle, but I think a horror movie tends to revolve around some sort of death or murder and this, that, and the other. And this film really didn't revolve around that so much, as it was driven more by just man's inhumanity to man, which can be the most horrible thing ever.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I'm going to say, I will get on my high horse now for another thing that I will say from watching this movie. Dear God, thank God we have some social safety nets in place now. I mean, geez, he gets off the boat and it's like the spiral down to nothing was just ridiculously fast.
I know.
And there was nothing to help him. But I think, and at this point, let's just go ahead and get into the plot summary, because I don't want to give away too much talking before the movie about it.
I have to give Laurie credit, because he directed this so well. He got the story across concisely, quickly. He didn't go off on tangents. It was only, 90 minutes, wasn't it? It was a little over an hour. It wasn't a very long movie.
No,
it wasn't even 70 minutes, I don't think. Yeah.
61 or 62 minutes, I think, is what it was, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Yeah.
If you want, it was 68 minutes.
But
I think that's what it was.
Laurie just kept that story moving. It's like there weren't any dead spaces. It was just like boom, 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 and I just really, really liked his direction in this. And I did find out, that he has an uncredited contribution to the script of the 1931 version of Frankenstein, Laurie. He was given the job of directing Frankenstein, and he screen tested Bela Lugosi to play the monster, but then Universal Pictures ended up with James Whale and Boris Karloff instead.
Yeah, that's because they Todd Brown and Universal. I mean, there was that big thing there, Laurie, Todd Browning, and then James Whale. And James Whale had a favor and a liking to Boris Karloff. Mm-hmm. Okay, and this is why it went on for, Peter Lorre could have been, Bela Lugosi could have cast it very well, being Frankenstein. but there was that thing that went on for the first 5 or 6 years in the early 30s of casting Karloff and Lugosi, Karloff being number 1 and Lugosi being number 2, simply for the fact that Lugosi wasn't chosen to be the Frankenstein monster, and stuff like that. And because Laurie didn't turn out to be the director, and instead it was James Whale.
Right, but he was going to be the director.
Exactly.
He did a lot of script writing and contribution to the script in Frankenstein. But then they went off and gave it to James Whale. And they wanted Boris Karloff instead. So that's
One final thing I want to add before Nick starts his plot summary, okay? This film, there's another movie real quick that I want to mention to any of the listeners out there that want to check it out, which has similar veins to this film, but more on the romantic side, and there's a love story in there like this one, but it turned out to be, a good film in the end.
Wait, was it Dark Man?
No, it wasn't Dark Man, Nick.
Oh,
I'm not going into the future to the 80s, Nick. I'm going to go back. I'm going to take you back to the 30s instead of the 1940s. No, the movie I'm talking about, guys, is a movie from 1935, okay? It's a gem. And watching this film, you got to go back and watch that movie because they are very similar. They're very much alike in many, many ways. And the movie is called Romance in Manhattan. And it has Ginger Rogers as the lead female role in the film, and Francis Lederer, who plays the guy. And it's the same storyline, coming from the old country and coming to New York, sees the Statue of Liberty, he's on a boat, he gets off the boat, and he's looking forward to being, the America and the American dream and getting a job and working, and boom, everything just turns flip-flop and it just doesn't go his way and things start to happen. So this movie, Romance in Manhattan, literally could be a virtual parallel to Face Behind the Mask, except that, in Romance, he doesn't get his face disfigured or nothing. The character, Francis Lederer, he's trying to gain his citizenship, to get a job in New York and stuff, and he meets up with Ginger Rogers, and it's a fantastic movie. So that's why I wanted to just mention that for anybody that wanted to see something similar to this film, Face Behind the Mask. Recommend Romance in Manhattan. Okay, that was it.
Okay. If anybody has the Son of Shock package, it's 20 titles that were released to television in 1958. This movie's in that, the Son of Shock package.
Okay.
It was the second package. The first package was the original Shock Theater with 52 features.
Okay.
And,
but I wonder how the quality is, though, because remember when this movie was gray marketed a lot, because of the fact that it was not available on DVD, or they couldn't, so basically they were transferring the film from 16 film print, and it was very washed out. The film print was pretty washed out, so the quality wasn't really that good, and the details behind the film wasn't really all that. I would say in the 5 or 6 category to watching the film, that's how the quality was. But when they released it finally to this Blu-ray 1080p beautiful version, you could really appreciate the film, paying attention to details on everything that goes around, what's happening around Laurie and the rest of the cast in the film, as we see.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
so in other words, buy the Blu-ray from FifthDimensionFilms.net.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go.
All right. So
moving on.
Moving on. So the Face Behind the Mask, which is not a horror movie, it is also not the prequel to Dark Man, but that's beside the point.
And it is also not the movie Face Behind the Mask. There's another movie with Boris Karloff called Face Behind the Mask, but it's not this one. Actually, there was another film with Boris Karloff called Face Behind the Mask, but it's that one could tend to be more a little bit on the horror side, but not this one. Okay, go ahead, Nick.
Well, this one's not Boris Karloff, so it's not that one. Aha! And much like the way they're doing with modern films like Suicide Squad and The Suicide Squad, this one is the face behind the mask. But anyway, so the film starts out, and we've got this Hungarian immigrant named János Szabó, and that's Peter Lorre, obviously, and he's on a boat, and, you know, the first time we're introduced to him, he basically just, okay, I'm going to roll that back for a second, because the title cards come up, and then there's this title card that basically says, you know, that many people come to America seeking the freedoms that are not available to them in other parts of the world. And I couldn't help but think about the fact that this film was made, probably in late 1940. It was released in early 1941 with everything that was going on in Europe at the time. I mean, Europe was in the war at that point. You know, America had not joined yet, but Europe was definitely in the throes of war, and people were fleeing it, and it was not a good time. So I couldn't help but think that this title card bit was a way of kind of poking at that some and being current and relevant for the day. But anyway,
I did read that there were 30,000 people a year allowed into the U.S. at that time.
Yeah, which
legally allowed in, but there were 10 times that many people trying to get into the U.S. and fleeing Europe at that time. Yeah.
So, anyway, the film opens and we got János Szabó, and that's Peter Lorre, and okay, he is a skilled tradesman. He is a watchmaker, and being a watchmaker is kind of a big deal back then. You know, that's not something you just pick up and do. Being a watchmaker is extremely precise work. It is well-paid work. I mean, you're going to be able to do well as a tradesman doing watchmaking and watch repair. Okay? And so he's got that under his belt. He also had experience. He was a pilot. He worked at an aircraft plant, and he tested aircraft. I mean, and the guy was a woodworker. He had all these mad skills, right? So he is set up for success. And he's come into the U.S., and he's got his girl, I think her name was Maria, back in the old country, and he's going to save up some money and bring her over. And we're introduced to him on the boat, and he walks up to one of the guys, one of the boat's crew, and he's like, "Excuse me, do you have a match?" And the guy goes to give him a match, and he's like, "Oh, I don't need it. I'm just practicing my English." And it was very cute little endearing scene, and that kind of sets up the character. And he is so happy and so hopeful for the future. And he's just a wonderful character, and he epitomizes, hey, I'm an immigrant. I'm going to come to the U.S. I'm going to make good. I'm going to bring my girl over. We're going to start a family. And, you know, it's just he is so hopeful and so optimistic. And he sees the Statue of Liberty, and he's just, oh, my God. And, you know, he gets to the U.S., and the first thing that happens is he thinks that his money's been stolen, his $59. So he goes running up the road till he finds a policeman. And it's kind of a cute little funny scene where he sees a policeman in uniform who's talking to a detective who's you know, plainclothes detective. And he's like, "Help me, my $59 has been stolen from me." And, you know, so he refers him to the gangstered from me. That's how he says it. I have been gangstered, and you know, and so the plainclothes officer refers him to Lieutenant O'Hara, and that was Don Bedeau. And Lieutenant O'Hara's like, "Well, where was the last place you saw it?" And then he starts recounting what happened. Then he realized that he's safety pinned it to his undershirt, which, by the way, that seems like something I would do while on vacation, but that's beside the point. So the detective kind of takes a liking to him. They go and have a drink, you know, like a milkshake, and while they're doing that, he says, "I need someplace to live," so he recommends this little hotel down the road that's like $6 a room for a week. And that fits in, you know, Szabó's, you know, $59 life savings budget, right? So he takes the room. Well, the guy who owns the hotel makes a point of saying, hey, no cooking in the room either, because I want you to eat at the cafe. And he immediately goes to work at the cafe washing dishes because the guy running the cafe comes out complaining that the dishwasher quit. So this guy Szabo is a hard-working man. He is ready to work. He is willing to work. He's willing to do whatever he needs to do. And, of course, some idiot is cooking in his hotel room and that doesn't want the manager to catch him. So he sticks his little hot plate into a drawer. Well, over time, that catches the clothes in there on fire, catches that on fire. Next thing you know, the hotel's on fire. Well, Peter Lorre, Szabo, he's asleep. And he wakes up when they're screaming and the fire department's there, and he's trying to get out of the building, and a big hunk of wall or ceiling collapses on him. Next thing you know, Szabo's in the hospital. Lieutenant O'Hara's there, and he's like, oh, what are his chances? And they're like, oh, it's 50-50. But even if he survives, he's had horrible third-degree burns on his face, and it's just awful. And Lieutenant O'Hara just feels terrible, so he writes on one of his detective business cards, hey, when you get out of the hospital when you get out and you're okay, call me. Something to that effect. Okay. Leaves it for him. Well, Peter Lorre finally wakes up, and he survives, but his face is bandaged. But even with his face completely bandaged, he's very hopeful and very excited, and he's talking to the doctor, and he's explaining to the doctor, like, look, my hands weren't injured, and I'm a watchmaker, and I am a craftsman, and I can do all this. And then they start taking the bandages off, and the nurse actually covers the mirror. And, that's kind of your first indication. I mean, other than the title of the movie, obviously. But that's kind of your first indication that things aren't going to go well. Well, then that nurse sort of maintains her composure. They take the bandages off, and she just kind of gasps and does a little bit of double take, but she kind of holds it together. Well, then another nurse walks into the room, and she practically screams. And at this point, Peter Lorre gets up and runs over to the mirror. And this is the only real sort of clear look we get what's happening. And to give it a simple description, he looks sort of like Chuck ground beef.
Yeah.
His face is just not in good shape. It's been third-degree burns all over it, which, considering how big Peter Lorre's eyes are, he's lucky his eyes didn't pop out of his head. No. But anyway, Szabo is, he's disfigured for life. And seeing how this is, pre-World War II America, nobody gives a rat's behind about him. And he quickly finds himself living in a junker car in a used car lot, or in a junkyard. He can't get a job anywhere. There's a watchmaker that actually has a sign, hey, watchmaker needed. How many watchmakers are just walking down the street in New York that would just happen to see that sign and go, hey, I need a job? Not that many. And he walks in, and the guy's focused on his watch, and he's like, oh, yeah, sure, I'm hiring. And then he looks up, sees Laurie's face. And again, throughout the entire film, never really see disfigurement of his face other than that one time. All the rest of it is shot kind of from behind, or it's shot from his waist level up, things like that. It's just, they're very skillful in avoiding showing his face. And the watchmaker is like, I can't hire you. The job was a mistake. And then he goes to an aircraft plant. Remember, he was a skilled aircraft mechanic and a pilot. And he can't get a job there. Why? Because of his face. So there he is in the junkyard living in a burned-out car. And he actually writes a really heart-wrenching note to Maria. I think it was Maria, his fiancée back in the old country, basically telling her that he is a woman and he's sorry to break her heart, but she needs to just move on. And he did it that way because Szabo is kind of not that wasn't going to tell his fiancée loves that he was fully disfigured because he didn't want her trying to come over and help him. You know, he's just like, go find somebody else, you'll find a better person, make your own life, go on. And at this point, he's kind of gone down to the docks, and he looks like he's about to kill himself. Well, just as he's obviously considering killing himself, another fellow walks up, and, you know, something's going on there, and he asks Peter Lorre for, I guess, a light or something, and when he sees Zabos' face, he screams and drops his wallet and runs off. Well, Zabos, being an honest guy who's about to kill himself, he picks up the wallet and he's going to go after him. But that's when Dinky, Georgie Stone, pops up.
Hello?
To do that, she
Okay, I've lost you.
Made $12 here. You know, this is little.
Wait, back up.
You've lost me?
Yeah, back up to where Dinky was. Where he met Dinky.
Well, Dinky was at the dock.
Yeah, well, back up to right when he met him and start again.
Okay. Me count. Hang on a second. I'm gonna. Okay, 5, 4. Okay, so he gets to the dock, and Dinky, you know, interrupts him as he's about to chase after this guy and try and give him his wallet back. And he's like, hey, you don't want to do that. This guy doesn't need it. Hey, we need it. And at this point, Zabo is kind of like, well, you know, I nobody wants to talk to me. Nobody will even look at me. And Dinky's like, hey, I'm talking to you. I'm looking at you. I'm somebody. Come on, let's go. This changes both our lives. And I guess at this point, both of them were homeless, essentially. Although, being a 1940s movie, homeless looked a lot better than reality. I mean, neither one of them looked that terrible, but they were homeless, still wearing neckties, but homeless nonetheless. Anyway, so they used the money to get a hotel room, and so they're living large in the hotel, at least till the money runs out. Dinky is explaining that he kind of leads a life of crime, but he's not very good at it. But he's really good at being a henchman. But the main guy for their crime gang, Jeff Jeffries, is in Sing Sing right now. So he's kind of a criminal without a gang. He's you know, so he needs somebody to help him with his career in crime. And he thinks that, you know, Zabos is super smart and very talented, good with his hands. He's like, hey, maybe you could help me out, you know. But Zabos is kind of like, no, this is not honest. I'm not going to do this. Well, anyway, Dinky gets sick. And being the uncaring world that it is, the hotel just kicks him out. And so Dinky and Zabos are now back in Dinky's abandoned car in the junkyard. And Dinky's sick. He's got, you know, pneumonia or something. So what does Zabos do? He takes on a job and makes some money, and he's able to get them into a nice hotel and get a doctor for Dinky. And then the rest of the gang shows up and demands their cut of the job that Dinky was supposed to do that he ended up having Zabos do. Well, one thing leads to another, and the next thing you know, Zabos is running the gang that Dinky runs with. And he's running it very well. And all of a sudden they're doing well. And the reason for that he's willing to do this is Dinky explains that with money he could get a plastic surgeon to fix his face. And Zabo is like, you know, I've got to do what I got to do. And nobody else is going to take care of me in this world, so I'm just going to do what I have to do to get the money to get my face fixed. And during this time, he goes to the plastic surgeon, and the plastic surgeon's assistant is there. And he's like, well, to do this kind of operation would be at least $1,000, but probably more than that. And bear in mind, $1,000 in 1940 is about, I don't know, $30,000 or $40,000 today. And the guy's like, but in the meantime, for $400, we can make you a mask of your old face. And so Dinky is continuing with the crimes. He gets the money together and purchases this latex mask of his face. And he says that the mask was made off of his passport photos. Well, it's a damn good mask, but the way they did the effect, it just doesn't look real on Zabos's face. You can tell it's a mask, even though it's actually Hugh Laurie's face. They've just done some stuff to, or not Hugh Laurie, excuse me, Peter Laurie's face. They've just done some stuff to it. But he's got this mask on, but he feels more confident. And about that time, Jeff Jeffries shows up. He's back. He's the boss of the gang. And he comes in and says he's going to take over the gang. And Zabos just lays the smackdown on him, but then turns around and says, look, you're skillful. I want you to work for me. You're part of the gang, but it's my gang. And suddenly, they're all living large and doing very well as criminals. And there's this whole crime spree, and it's ironic that Lieutenant O'Hara, the one guy that was friends with Zabos, is now under threat from his boss because he can't stop this crime spree. And Zabos is doing what he can for, the gang and to raise the money. And he finally gets enough money to go consult with the plastic surgeon. And the surgeon says, I'm so sorry. If you had come sooner, maybe we could do something. But the best we could do is fix your face through 1 inch at a time of surgery. And they would have to be 6 months apart. And it would take 30 surgeries. So he figured out it would take him like 15 years to have his face restored. And so, needless to say, Zabo is depressed. And I think he's considering taking his own life again, maybe. I don't know. But he walks out of there and literally runs into Helen Williams, who's played by Evelyn Keys. And she's a blind woman who makes her living threading beads into necklaces for a department store jewelry department. I mean, and this woman is so positive and upbeat.
I know.
Even though life has beaten her down, she is so nice. Zabo is immediately smitten with her. And the thing is, she's not looking at his face. She's looking at his heart.
Yeah.
And there's this whole thing where, he is not doing good things, but he's still a good person. And she sees that. And he decides he wants to be a better man. And he wants to make a life for him and for Helen. And they court. He's still committing the crimes, but he's saving up money so that they can get married and start a family and all this. And at this point, I'm going to stop. And this is way early, but I'm going to stop.
Yes.
Because we're not going to give away the end of this movie.
Yes.
Okay? But let's just say there's a lot of positive stuff that's being set up here, and none of it's going to pay off. Okay? So watch the film. I highly recommend this film.
Yes.
It was excellent.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes, it was.
Peter Lorre was wonderful in it. Evelyn Keys was wonderful in it. I mean, it was well acted overall, well directed, well written. It just came across very smooth and effective.
Yes.
And the movie didn't lose anything over the 70-plus years since its release.
Exactly.
It's actually getting more accolades now than it did then.
Well, I think part of that has to do with the fact that it's all of a sudden available to be seen again.
Right.
Like Juan said, it was on the gray market forever.
Yeah.
And so that means you only had people who probably already knew about the film looking for it.
Yeah.
But now with the Blu-ray release, available through fifthdimensionfilms.net, you are able to experience this film. And it's coming to a whole new generation.
Yes.
So Fiona and I both really enjoyed it. Do take your antidepressants.
Yes.
You'll
fall in love
or
with
if
the
you're.
Yanos.
It's a very unusual film for Laurie because, like we were mentioning before in the beginning, we're talking about, all the films that he did and how he was casted in many different roles. doing comedy, doing horror, doing, drama, doing noir, doing, and it's like I said, this is like one of the few that kind of like was typecasted differently than all the other ones that he's normally been known for to do. And I just thought it was a very well put together role by Laurie, and it was a good movie. It was a great film. I thought maybe it was worth for me to have this in my collection, especially the Blu-ray with the interview and the audio commentaries. Now, did you watch it with the audio commentaries, Mary?
I watched it a little bit, but that meant I had to watch the movie a second time, and by that time I was so upset that I couldn't watch it. I watched all the interviews and stuff, and the other stuff.
How about you, Nick? How about you?
Watch it the second time.
No, I didn't watch the audio commentary yet. I was kind of saving it because I don't like to watch the commentary until I've watched a movie first off.
Okay, gotcha.
And, but that said, I do think this was a really good flick. I'm kind of like Mary. I couldn't handle it immediately after watching it to go back and watch the commentaries, but I plan to watch them.
Yes.
And I do think that it's a, what's the best way to put it? It's a well worth watching movie.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you, Juan, for letting us.
No, it's something a little different because I wanted to go back to the roots a little bit, because we've been doing a lot of more 70s and 80s films and stuff like that, B's, but I wanted to go back into the 40s, the 30s, and do some of the stuff that, we normally, stuff that Vince used to love to do, because he liked to do a lot of movies in the 50s and the 40s, and we've done so many, from the 30s and 40s, and I know we've covered different types of genres, but this particular film being from 41 and being, I thought, I said to myself, this is the one I want to do, coming back to the cast to do it. So I'm glad you guys did it. I'm glad, Mary, I'm glad, Nick. Great job on not spoiling this one. I really, kudos to you on that.
Again, just take your antidepressant before you watch.
Well, here's the thing about spoiling this movie. If this was one that everybody'd probably seen already, I'd be tearing that up.
Yeah.
But because this one hasn't had a lot of availability, I think it's better to just let people find it and watch it.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
So kudos to that.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So, Mary, we got any feedback or anything going on?
We do. We have a few. First one's from Patrick Kelly. I had been emailing him back and forth about this movie, and he said, thanks for the heads up on The Face Behind the Mask. I'm sure I've never seen it before. According to my notes, it's part of the 2 shock theater movie packages from the 1950s that spurred the rise of locally hosted TV horror shows, like Bill Cardill's Chiller Theater in the 50s and 60s. The Face Behind the Mask is one I'm really looking forward to. I just took a glance at the plot premise in the Wikipedia article on the film. Nothing rings a bell, so now I'm 100% sure I've never seen it before. And he said, there's a link that I'll send on to Nick that he can post. It's an article about shock theater and how these 2 packages that that were sent out actually created all our horror movie, the stuff we grew up loving, all our horror hosts and stuff. That this package spurred that. And he says many film historians see a connection between these 2 film to TV packages and the rise of chiller theater style TV shows. And he says, yep, I love Bill Cardill on both his chiller theater and his Saturday afternoon studio wrestling shows. Those 2 programs are the reason why I was totally jazzed when my family finally ponied up and got wired into the local cable TV system in 1964. So thank you, and I will send that link on to Nick. Because that sounds like a really interesting link. I didn't realize those packages were what started the whole chiller theater craze in this country.
Mm-hmm.
This next one is by Scott Wirtz. Congratulations on winning. He says, greetings from the creepy San Fernando Valley, soon to be immortalized once again by Valley native Paul Thomas Anderson in Licorice Pizza. The trailer is showing in theaters only. This title refers to a prominent chain of record stores in Southern California in the 70s. During the first lockdown, we cruised by the set of a local gas station made up to look like 1973. I think I saw some of those on Facebook. People had posted. Enough about that. It will certainly be an A picture. Just surviving Contagion and Contagion 2 at the moment. CFO CPA by day, B-movie, and music geek by night. Not much going on in the way of screenings right now, but I do have some inside information that Invaders from Mars will be getting a full restoration. Wow. Probably will not see the light of day for a year or two. Wow. Man, that would be great. Catching up on some old favorites via streaming. Watched War of the Worlds, which contains the destruction of my fair city. I did scoff when Gene Barry said he walked to downtown from Corona. It's 50 miles away. And according to Google, the Googles, it would take 16 and a half hours. And his girl did it in heels. Even more impressive was the Sprite at Twilight from downtown, the sprint from Twilight from downtown to the Methodist Church in Hollywood. It's 8 miles and only took him a few minutes. Sign that guy up for the Olympics. Oh, and who takes a full-on square dance outfit on a camping trip? Maybe the guys weren't up there just for fishing. I don't remember that, but okay. My wife got me the Criterion Godzilla Showa series set. Did I say that right, Nick? Showa?
Showa, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It included in it is the Japanese cut of Godzilla vs. King Kong. As with the first two films, the original Japanese cut is a different movie and much better. Haven't listened to many podcasts as of late, as I'm working from home most of the time. My office is nearby in the West Valley near Lake Sherwood, into which Frankenstein threw that little girl. My commute is about 15 to 20 minutes. Off to walk the dog by the old Hasselhoff place. And this is from Scott from the creepy San Fernando Valley. I love his little
Scott.
Local tidbits on movies.
Yeah, it's pretty
Scott.
cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
That Showa era that he was talking about, the Godzilla, it's really amazing. It's actually like a giant book. It's a book. It's an art book. And then you got the 15 films in there. There's actually 15 films, and Blu-rays. All 15 Blu-rays of the Kaiju classics released. The Showa era was actually from 1954 all the way to 1975, 76. Which was the first 20 years of Godzilla was considered the Showa. Oh. So that collection is from Criterion, by the way, and they did a fantastic job with it in putting together the Showa era films of Godzilla from between 54 and 75.
Great.
And maybe they'll do the same for the Heisei era. I'm hoping that the Criterion will put out a release for the Heisei, which was actually from 76 all the way to 96. So that covered the next 20 years of Godzilla. And then after that was the Millennium era. But yeah, that is a very good set. If you haven't picked one up, it's pretty hefty in price. I think it's over $200, but I think Amazon has it for about $150, $140. You can still pick it up fairly decent.
So Scott married well. It has a very nice wife.
Very.
Yes. Okay, this next one's from Marlo Brown. Says, hi, Mary, Nick, Juan, and everybody at the B-Movie Cast Clubhouse. The contest answer is Gymkata from 1985. This one literally took less than 2 seconds to identify. I saw Gymkata in the cinema back in the day and have seen parts of it since then on cable. I placed it firmly in the not great but fun category of B movies. That's exactly what you said. I'm so glad y'all are planning to do Battle Creek Brawl. It really showcases Jackie Chan's amazing charisma and abilities and makes me wonder why the movie didn't catapult him into stardom in his country.
Mm.
Michael Worth goes into detail about that on the cast. So listen to it.
Okay.
That's true. So, hey, listen to the cast and get your information.
Y'all have been crushing
And then pick up a copy from Fifth Dimension Films. FifthDimensionFilms.net.
Y'all have been crushing it lately. The Killer Crocodile episode was a lot of fun and a great choice. Dr. Adrian Smith. Dr. Smith was an excellent guest, and I hope you ask him back whenever he's free. He is great. Yep. But he's so busy now with his own podcasts that... Okay. Congratulations to all of you on the upcoming 500th episode. I suggest that you might do a countdown to 500 and choose outstanding films from 10 categories: classic sci-fi, universal monsters, kaiju, weird westerns, etc. For the countdown, searching your database, it looks as though you haven't done the classic Time Machine from 1960 with Rod Taylor, nor the 53 version of War of the Worlds with Gene Barry and Anne Robinson. Perhaps one of those could find a place in the countdown. For number 500, may I suggest a classic cult film that celebrates B-movies and even references some that you've done recently, like Night of the Demon and When Worlds Collide. It has a tremendous cast, and, best of all, it's still in theaters, so at least some of you could see it live. I'm suggesting none other than the only movie in the Rocky series that does not star Sylvester Stallone, the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I had to break it to him. We have that one planned for our Halloween special with Mark Mostyn.
Yep, that's because that's a favorite of Mark Mostyn's. He'd like to do that for Halloween, and I think that's a good suggestion though for the 500th movie. And I also like the countdown idea. We're going to have to take some of those into consideration when we're figuring out what to do for this stuff.
That's true. That means we have to plan stuff. Ooh.
I know. Good luck with that.
Yeah, really. He goes on to say, I'll let you think about that last suggestion. I suspect it will grow on you. It's a really fun movie. I saw it several times back in the 80s, but I never dressed up. I usually sit in the safe zone under the overhang of the balcony and just yell at the screen with my friends and enjoy the spectacle. Take care and give my best to everyone. Bye, Mary. Bye, Marlo. From the chupacabra-infested borderlands of South Texas. And then he goes on to say, I've been thinking about the 500th. He sent us a second one. I've been thinking about the 500th episode, and one title keeps coming to mind if you want a truly epic episode: On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Weren't we going to do that in the Bond series?
We are going to do that. That's our Christmas movie with Mark Mostyn.
Marlo.
Hey, Mary, it makes sense when you watch the movie.
Okay. It's arguably one of the all-time best Bond films.
Me on that.
And it's a favorite of many of the hardcore fans who've seen all the films multiple times, like me. It has, in my not so humble opinion, one of the best theme songs, the all-time best Bond girl, Diana Rigg, and a fairly solid villain. It's also simply a really good movie that holds up well even today. It also has a lot of fun details about the cast, the production, and how it's received by fans over the years. If you invite Mark Mostyn, it could be one of your best podcasts ever. So
well, funny. So what is he? Has he been reading our mail?
I know. That's scary. Wow.
I'm just checking because it's.
Oh, he says, by the way, you owe it to yourselves to look up the Propeller Heads version of On Her Majesty's Secret Service theme song. Although it may not be for everyone, I love it. It's on their excellent Decks and Drums and Rock and Roll album and can be found on YouTube. Back to searching which Bond theme is most repulsive to chupacabras. So far, Madonna's Die Another Day is the runaway winner. The little monsters hate it, and the neighbors do too. Goes on.
I'm going to say they aren't the only ones, but moving on.
And he goes on to say, bye, Mary. And again, bye, Marlowe from the chupacabra-infested borderlands of South Texas. And sorry, Marlowe.
I mean, no, that was some good feedback.
It really was.
It is funny. Marlowe's been reading our emails, obviously, Mary. So, you know.
Wow. That is crazy.
I know, right?
I mean, because we don't usually schedule a whole lot of movies, and he picked 2 of them.
I know.
ESP.
And you want to know what else is really freaky?
What?
He picked the 2 we're planning to do with Mark Mauston this year.
That's true. Yeah.
So weird.
I know.
All right. Well, anything else, guys?
No. I think that's it.
No, that's it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thanks for putting together another show, Mary. It's a good time.
Yeah. Thank you, Mary.
Thanks for picking
it was a good
this
show.
movie. I really enjoyed it. Well.
Looking forward to the next one.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Well, you guys have a good evening, and that's about it.
Yeah.
You
night.
take good care. Good night.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
Adios, Mafia.
Well, they've gone.
For good, John?
No, just for now. It wasn't the right time for us to meet. But there'll be other nights, other stars for us to watch. They'll be back.
The ghosts are moving tonight, restless, hungry.
All right, fellas, here's your story.
Greetings, my friend. We are all interested in the future, for that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives. And we cannot keep this a secret any longer.
Wait, Captain. I have found evidence of intelligent beings on this planet.
Look to the skies. It's the B-Movie Cookbook. Menus inspired by 15 of your favorite B-movies from the 1950s, with teenage werewolves, blobs, and enough cheese for everyone.
When we return to our planet, the High Court may well sentence you to torture.
But until then, we've got Ed Wood and Vincent Price.
There'll be food and drink and ghosts, and perhaps even a few murders. You're all invited.
So impress your friends with dinner and a movie with the B-Movie Cookbook. We've got you covered. Get your copy today at bmoviecookbook.com. That's bmoviecookbook.com.
Let me see that book. I am interested to see what sways your mind so heavily.
Sure thing. Just visit bmoviecookbook.com.
Anybody around here want some coffee?
Transmission.
The good guys always win, even in the 80s.